What's good with the YouTube? You already know, Big Flocka with a convict's perspective, man. Top of the morning, man. Hope everybody's having a positive and productive day. I got my microphone right here. I put the volume a lot louder. When I listen to the content, it sounds fine and perfect. I can hear myself clearly. But I decided to, up the volume. I seen a little bit of complaints, so let's see if this works a little bit better for you guys. So I'm going to smash, dash, and slide on through with a whole lot of energy and get this thing cracking, man. So today's story, man, I see a lot of comments. People are saying, hey, Flocks, you know what I mean? What ancestry are you in Rojo and whatnot and all this stuff, right? Okay, so here it is, guys. Okay, growing up in a Mexican gang, in a Mexican neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? Being basically of Weddle descent, basically being of white descent, you know what I'm saying? My ethnic background, my mom was Italian, and her dad was French. They were both, I think my mom was either first or second generation. My mom was here. On my dad's side, my dad's mom was Native American, and his father, I don't know, all kinds of stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I have a little bit of everything based upon the fact of my ethnic background. I have Latin descent, and I have, what you call indigenous background based upon my grandma. So I have a lot of Latin bloodlines, and I also have a little bit of the indigenous bloodlines as well. But I also have a lot of white bloodlines as well. So I'm pretty much a mixture. But growing up, colored eyes, being in the neighborhood, people always have asked, do growing up looking, Weddle and so forth, did you experience any hate, struggles, and whatnot? And to some extent, when you're younger, you do experience a little bit of that, especially being from a small town. Milpitas borders basically East Side Sanjo. It's back in those days. It was the raza started to get deeper and deeper out there. I'd say sometime in the late '90s, and as did everywhere. But growing up, man, we had to fight a lot. For our respect against other groups, against other races and whatnot. And it was kind of treacherous back in those days, man. I think by the time I got out the joint, we pretty much had a lot of the numbers out there on the streets. Whereas opposed in the beginning, we had to fight for everything as a kid. And so, growing up at times, man, people would test you based upon your appearance, and even more so when I was going to juvenile hall, boys ranch, there'd be homeboys from certain hoods that would fuck with me. That I knew, and there would be that mutual respect. And then, eventually I had to put in my own work. And so I always had a chip on my shoulder, feeling that the need to have to, put in that work just to be recognized, And so, was it a struggle at times? Yes. Did you hear people start to talk shit sometimes? Yes. My name, like I said, my name Flocka was given to me by my homeboy, Grumpy and Capone's mother. They were Bolivian. And I used to go over there and eat, stay the night, all kinds of stuff. They were they were family orientated. And so they used to always, take me under the wing at the time and stay the night over there and whatnot. And, you do experience that, man. If anybody says that you didn't back in the 80s and 90s, there's always going to be those that make remarks or comments or whatnot. And therefore, it's a stereotype. I think nowadays you don't experience it, but during that time era, you got to remember, I was involved when the Norteños had the infusion in Northern California, where there was, everybody started to gangbang overnight, and a lot of people started, going from one group to the next, because a lot of them were kind of blind from where I'm from. Santa Clara County, the neighboring cities, you'd have a lot of Mexicans that were trying to be Crips and whatnot. And eventually that changed because a lot of people had family members. The story of my hood is the same thing. We were brown priders at first. And so, I did experience a little bit of people who would look at me differently or think that I wasn't going to be the one. And a lot of that changed later on in my career to where I didn't experience it. So fast track, I think that had a lot to do with the need for recognition in myself, the ego, to where by the time I got out, I did about 15 months almost straight as a juvenile. I was out on the run a couple times, but, and then I went to the county jail and I started learning a little bit about the politics. And then even then, there was a little bit of a distance as far as, I would notice that certain homeboys that would be more recognized or, pulled under the wings of certain homeboys as opposed to maybe me, because I was more on the level 2, the snake pits and other areas like that. And eventually, I ended up getting down to, a level 4 facility in the county jail. And this is where the education started to present itself, because they seen I was eager. They seen I was eager and I was learning things and I was ready to do whatever. And a lot of that was fueled, like I said, by my ego, the recognition to want to have others look at me in a higher regard. You get what I'm saying? So I'd be ready to put in work, and do whatever, I was, my Spanish was better back then, because in my neighborhood, anybody that grew up during my time era, in my hood, my homeboys' first primary language was always Spanish, even when they were kicking it. There would be times where I'd be kicking it with a homeboy, and one of my homeboys, BG, and they would sit there. Me and him would go out, and his English wasn't too good at the time. He had just came from Mexico City. He had been embraced by a homeboy that was from the hood that went back to Mexico City, and he came back and he was banging Milpas, Norte, and all that. And so me and him would be rolling around, and sometimes we get jammed up. Like, are you guys homeboys or what? Because of his accent, shit, you guys not. And so, I experienced, I think, in the beginning stages, and if it wasn't directly said, it was felt, But I think over time, the effort, the ability to put in work, you know what I'm saying, and the more I got to know homeboys, the more I started to feel comfortable myself, and the more advancement that I was seeking to be a contributor to the cause and struggle. I had a particular cellie named Victor Amador, Guile from Sunnyvale, who laced me up really well. They specifically put me in the cell with him. He was a head of mono at the time. He had issues later on, but he cleared it up. They put me in the cell so I could get educated. And this is when I learned about the cause, the struggle, about, the NF's history, the NR's history. And, there was lugs that were being taught to me about the format and bonds and whatnot. And I started getting higher education, and that propelled me to continue to strive. See, back then there was a word where they said, you have that fire, you're striving, and you could be a homeboy and not be as affected by the prison politics if you chose not to, which means you just did the basic of what was expected of you, the basic HHPs, basic YPPs. I mean, most facilities at that time were not giving a written structure of HHPs and YPPs. A lot of times it was given to you verbally at that time. These are their expectations, be up during these time hours, be suited and booted, and post for your showers. And if something kicks off, you better engage. Other than that, there wasn't an extreme, rigorous type of program for the homeboys, right? And so, for me, man, I just kept on propelling, man. I was involved in a whole lot of shit already. By the time, before I went to prison, I already had an attempted murder, all kinds of fucking other things. Plus back then in the county jail, we'd fight. So if you didn't know how to fight before you got to the county jail, or if you thought you could fight, right, you were going to learn real quick. You were going to get into that grown man shit, man. We had one-on-ones and stuff, you know what I'm saying? We had little melees with Africanos, Asians, you know what I'm saying? Even I got into a couple fights with homeboys as well. You know what I'm saying? You're going to learn to fight. You're going to see where you are as a man. And eventually, what you do is going to catch back to you. If you were always down, you were always treating gente right, your name starts to circulate in the system. First, it's going to be in the area you're from, and then eventually in the system, when you go in there and start to meet other homeboys, you start to hear people say, okay, Flax from Milpas, oh, I know that Vato, he's cool. That's a sharp dude, whatever they may say, man, oh yeah, he was running this facility, or he was doing this. And you start to build what you call your career, And I know early on there was those that were hating a little bit because I had deep involvement later on in life. When I got, everything fully sanctioned, right? And then when I hit the streets, I started to slowly continue to soak things in, learn from other carnales, and then elevate my status. That the same people that before that looked at me with a fucking negative eye, like they were all with shit, now I'm coming through, stepping through in the county jail, not only being a fucking weirdo looking, but also being fucking from a small town, and I'm able to ascend authority positions or jurisdictions in the county jails, other prisons. And being from a small town, I know a lot of dudes from San Jose sometimes would hate. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't want to have to acknowledge that I was the authority in charge, but they had no fucking choice, because the one thing anybody could sit there and say about me is I pushed a hard line. In other words, I kept everything in tune with what the bylaw said. I was in contact with the right people, and I had a mouthpiece that if you wanted to go in writing skills, my writing skills are even better than my verbal skills. If you wanted to debate and you wanted to try to go into the infrastructure, bylaws and mandates, I was so abreast of them and was so knowledgeable of them. You know what I'm saying? I could sit there and present any type of case in any type of situation. You know, and that was very paid dividends later on in my career, where a lot of people would, whether I was holding a position or not, they would seek out a response from me or a way of me to interpret it, you know, or a way for me to stamp something or look at it, you know. So, you know, for me, I'm not gonna lie, man, it was like a milestone, personal milestone, that being respected and regarded, and being able to have that much confidence when I stepped in anywhere. And the knowledge and the backing, it was like how you say it, the support I had, it felt good in myself. You know what I'm saying? This was what I thought my life was going to be the rest of my life. You know, anybody that really knows me during that time era knows how I used to be. As far as, you know, when I first hit the system to when I started to elevate my status. You know, I guess in some senses you could say I was a seeker of attention. A lot of people are. If you're trying to have status, rank and file and whatnot, a lot of times, man, you're fueled by that ego. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the truth of it. No one's going to sit there and tell me any different. And so these are the type of things that I experienced. You know, I remember going through and, like, you know, certain homeboys would get shown more love and whatnot when I was first going to the county, based upon the fact I was from a small town or what I looked like. Later on, I didn't play that shit. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I always felt inside, this is just what I felt. It doesn't mean that it was true, but I felt I had to go 10 times harder than the next man, and I had to be 10 times smarter. Therefore, I pushed 10 times harder. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I had a straight, rigorous, fucking disciplined program. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was, you know, I had studies later on, and very few were able to match me as far as the type of position I had, as far as the discipline and stuff like that, man, because that's just what I felt I needed to do. I always felt that, you know, the political spectrum of prison politics, you can't give nobody any room to attack you. And so that's the position I always had. Now, I treated everybody right. I was in accordance to the laws and so forth, right? But I safeguarded myself, because that's one of the key teachings that the Carnal Carlitos and, you know, Wino from Oakland taught me was, you know your laws. These safeguard and protect you. Before you can protect any gente, you have to be able to protect yourself. Once you commit to either associating yourself or being a part of this, everything else, it doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, you are part of this. You know what I'm saying? No one can take that from you. No one can take that you're on the books. No one can take that you're this and that. So therefore, you know what I'm saying, I knew that, you know, I had to stay on top of game. Because that's, you know, besides whether you're from a small town or whether you're fucking white or Asian or, you know what I mean, people are always going to hate, man. You know what I'm saying? It's the natural instinct of mankind to have jealousy and stuff like that, man. You know, and I would always lead by example. You know what I'm saying? Because I always felt that a true leader wasn't just going to always be given the directives, but they had to be willing to take action. You know what I'm saying? And I did that the first time when I was sent to down south, not down south, but to a prison that was all fucked up, which was CMC East. I get to the hole, you know what I mean? I'm starting to give these guys the bonds and trying to educate them. I mean, there was Jason Stewart Hansen was there, Belone from EPA. Who else was there? I think Funnel from Dakota was there before he went bad. But all these individuals were there, and a dude came through that had to go. That I told them that this dude's all bad. He did this and did that. And rather than asking someone to do it. Now, bear in mind, these dudes didn't even get off on the yard when they went there. They got rolled up a week later for promoting gang activity. I got there and I got off, right? Within I think 6 or 8 hours, I was already in the hole on a battery. So, like I said, I'm not going to sit there and tell you what time it is we do. So I said, yo, check this out. I'll deal with the dude. We went to the showers. They showered you in groups. Anybody been there, they know what I'm talking about. I waited for the handcuffs to come off this dude, and I beat the shit out of him. Right there in front of everybody. Fucking in my boxers, fucking shower shoes and everything. That dude fucking balled up. And they couldn't do nothing about it. Those are the examples you have to set. You know, another time when the removal went down in DVI, right on the on the 4 yard. The homeboys we tried to send it, dude. They had their hands full. You know what I'm saying? And even attacking the individual in a prone position, which was Chino from Manteca, right? Manteca. He started to get up. I jumped in on that one too. I beat the 115, but for a minute I was taken off the yard. But as the leader of the whole prison, I'm not supposed to get involved. I'm not supposed to, you know what I mean? We were short on manpower. There was other people there. I got involved and took off on dude, and then I stepped on back once everything was done. After that, that's the kind of examples you have to set. You have to always realize that people are going to look at reasons to fault you, reasons to go against you, reasons not to accept you. And so those are the things that you'd have with experience. Being part of a gang, being part from a small city, being not of Mexican descent, you know what I'm saying? These, or not Mexican descent, Mexican descent, I guess. National, you know, which those are the experience I went through. You know what I'm saying? Even though I have similar bloodlines through indigenous, excuse my language, man, in native bloodlines, in Latin bloodlines, still people are going to sit there and hold some type of fucking reason to fucking try to attack and whatnot, you know, and it's just unfortunate, man, that, you know, sometimes people don't judge you by appearance instead of your deeds, your actions, and whatnot. And that's the problem sometimes that people from smaller towns or people that are different ethnicities may experience, you know. Now, I've seen less of that later on in my career. I don't know if that was because of the position I held at times, because when I stepped into a facility, I was usually going to be in a high position, whether I was going to take over that prison, educate people, or whatever it may be. And I left my trademark mostly every place where I went. You know what I'm saying? I was very influential, always deeply in the mix. And so, and you know, there was a lot of carnalismo. There was a lot of respect. There was a lot of unity. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't those that harbored secret, I'm not going to call it hate, jealousy sometimes, secret, they had ulterior motives. You know, they'll smile on your face. It's the same thing like you see experience with YouTube. They'll smile on your face and then they'll go behind your back. And see, I was always a realist because I thought that's the way you had to be. You come to the forefront. You know, fuck the dirty politicking. Save the politicking for shit that needs to be done. You know, and yeah, that's pretty much the extent of it. You know, I would be lying to sit there if I said, oh yeah, everything was perfect and I was just fully embraced. No, there was people that would talk shit behind the scenes. Not so much when I had status and when I had was being a major impact within the movement. But before that, you had to earn everything, man. And that's the thing is I felt like you had to put more work in than the next man early on those stages. And so all that did was it fueled me to continue to propel myself, continue to strive. You know what I'm saying? To be in the books, to ask questions. You know what I'm saying? And to have an analytical perspective of things. Because I would watch and see where the errors of why people get deemed no good, how they get crossed up, and a lot of it had to do with people wouldn't cover their ass. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't have people to corroborate their stories, and people have a bone to pick. That's how people get crossed up. It'd be over a female. It'd be over accusations. It'd be over someone harboring something you may have done to them at another facility. Next thing you know, they're trying to cross you up. So, you know, for me, I never had no issues in my career. Never had one call that was fucking rescinded or told that I shouldn't have made that call. Everything pretty much was always honored because I stayed up to par. You know, and anybody that will understand what I mean when I say this. When you're living that life on a 24/7 level and you're involved, you're fucking on top of your game if you're a firm believer. And so I was always on top of my game. You know, I was on freeze that one time on the Gaius for something that really was out of my hand and I had nothing to do. Other than that, there was never any accusations. There was never any allegations. There was those that actually tried to go up to the Bay, and one dude tried to do that and tried to file a false report on me, and he got shut fucking down. I think it was even Dancy Beer that shut it down, from my understanding. DB said, "No, that's not Flox," and word got to me, and I was like, "No, this motherfucker's full of shit." And it just was funny because of the person who, I'm trying to think who it was. I think it may have been Cyclone from Capitol Park, man. You know what I mean? I think it may have been him. I could be wrong, so I don't want to smut his name up, but I know he changed his tune as soon as I left and was working with the individual Chino from Santa Rosa, who was another dude. We were cool, but I didn't want to relinquish any authority to him when I was leaving, even though he was a carnal. I just didn't. I felt there was something wrong, but I had to follow the law, and I had to do what was to avoid any type of internal conflict at the time as well. But I did tell him how I felt. I reported everything when I got to where I got, because I questioned Mark, this dude's status at that time. Anyways, this is just a brief story, man. People ask the questions, hey, are you Raza? Man, I rocked with Raza my whole life, bro. My kids speak Spanish. You know what I mean? My everything. So that's where I've always been. You know what I'm saying? Since a young kid, I grew up in a certain neighborhood to where the main elementary school I went to was mainly of Raza or African American descent, or Asians and so forth, man. You wouldn't see anybody that was fucking Wedo in that school. You know what I'm saying? It'd be very, very rare. All my homeboys, they all spoke Spanish, except I went to everything as a kid. You know what I'm saying? And I have family members too. You know what I mean? On both sides. You'd be surprised at the amount of family members that I have that are involved as far as in this lifestyle. I just don't always put people out there. And I have family members too that are part of other groups too. It's a little bit crazy, man. Anyways, this is my experience, and I think anybody growing up in the 80s and 90s would experience the same. Rojo, he didn't really experience it, he said, but he said that he probably knew that they probably felt it. Me, it was a little bit different because the amount of homeboys were deep back then. So you were basically favoritized by what family you were from, who you were related to, and what hood you were from. That had a lot to do with things, back in the 80s and 90s and so forth, man. Anyways, this is my story. This is what I went through, man. Much respect to everybody out there. There's a lot of good dudes. There was a lot of carnales, that also came out. A lot of bros that were different races, white, Asian, black, and so forth, You still got a lot of them that are still active as well. So, when it came to the movement, Nuestra Raza, right? La Raza Norteña, which the northern race, it wasn't about what your ethnic background was. It was about where your beliefs were your ideologies, and what bandera were you representing. If you represented that, you were part of La Raza, you were part of the people, and you were part of the movement, and therefore you were expected to follow all mandates, all rules of conduct that were associated with this particular group. And that's the truth. Anybody that's been in the mix knows that lifestyle, knows exactly what I'm talking about. Do people have challenges? I suppose so. I think less so now than back then, because I think a lot of people were pioneers as far as like, look, this is what La Raza Norteño was about. Whether you were an Africano, white, Asian, if you were down for the gente, you were to be shown the same equal level of respect, due process, and love that anybody else would be shown. And that's the truth. Anyways, this is your boy Flaco. I thought I'd do a different spiel because I seen this question. Here it is there, man. This is a little bit more in depth, a little bit more details. You know what I'm saying? Much love and respect to everybody out there, to all Raza and so forth. Keep on pushing. And I'm going to keep on pushing. Late.